Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1027A, and today's date is July 20th, 2016, and the title of the episode is Déjà Vu. The economic indicators look a lot like 2008. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, today it looks like the market is flat, and we're seeing that gold is being suppressed once again, and it really looks like the central bankers, the U.S. government, they're trying to continually suppress gold and try to bring it under that $1,300 mark. Because remember, their whole agenda is to make people believe that the economy is doing well. And the only way they can do this is to keep gold suppressed, to keep the stock market increasing, and this will convince people that the economy is doing well. Now, in the meantime, we're seeing a completely different story. Yesterday we discussed the Gallup polls, which shows that people have no hope for the economy. They don't believe it's going to improve. And we're seeing more layoffs, more cuts in financial institutions. We're seeing cuts in tech companies. We're seeing cuts coming up in aerospace. And we see Comerica to cut about 790 jobs. They're closing about 40 branches. That's 9% of its workforce. There's an update for Bank of America. They're going to be laying off 2,600 in the second quarter. Goldman Sachs, in the last 3 months, has laid off 1,700 people. And we see Deutsche Bank. They're going to be closing about 200 branches. And will merge about 188 of its branches across the country. And we understand that banks are struggling. We're realizing that banks are coming in with their revenues and they are down. We're seeing that IBM's revenues are down. But that doesn't matter. They're buying back their stock. They're pumping up the market. And as revenues continually fall, as global defaults rise around the world, the stock market is soaring to all-time new highs. And a lot of the financial pundits are scratching their heads saying, this is not really making sense right now. It makes no sense that it's rising, but we'll just go along with it. Now, we understand there are bubbles all over the place. Now, the central bank, the U.S. government, they do have the ability to create these bubbles through loaning people money. They can do it with the housing market. They can do it with the student loan market. They can do it with the auto loan market. They have trouble in the retail area because many people do have credit cards, but those are maxed out, and you can't really go for a loan to buy goods. Because we have to remember, people are tapped out, they're losing their job, their credit cards are maxed, and this is why retail is contracting. Now, the White House came out with a report because they're trying to convince everyone that getting a student loan is a good thing. And President Obama's top economists, they came out with this report saying that everyone has the student debt all wrong. It's completely wrong, and that the massive increase in student debt is actually good for the economy. It's not reducing spending. It's not hurting retail. And they came up with this conclusion that over a period of time, these people that go to college, they'll make a lot more money than what their student debt is. Now, of course, that is true, but except for one factor. This might have been the case back in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, but right now, you can't find that job. This is the problem. I know many people that are graduating school who have a lot of debt. They cannot find work. Actually, a lot of people are emailing me, letting me know the same problem is happening to them. And there are other reports saying, well, this report is kind of missing the mark because what they're seeing is that since these students can't get those high-paying jobs after college, they're not really saving money. And since they can't get the jobs, they have to live with their parents. So if they're living with their parents, they can't save money. They're not buying houses. They're not going out and buying things in the retail stores. It's becoming very difficult for them to make it every single day. And we're seeing that as the debt rises for these students, it's becoming more and more difficult, and it's having a negative effect on the economy. Now, of course, they're trying to convince everyone that student loan is a good thing because they want more people to take out student loans. They want them to continually increase the bubble because, remember, there can't be bailouts at this point for student loans. The government can't come in and say, okay, we have billions of dollars that are defaulted. We'll just create more currency from the Fed. We'll borrow it and we'll pay this off. They can't do that. And this is why they need the student loan bubble to continually inflate as high and as big as it possibly can get. Now, we talk a lot about the housing market, and we are starting to see that these housing markets in all these different cities, when we look at San Francisco, we look at Dallas, we look at Boston, Atlanta, Denver, North Carolina, Seattle, and many other areas, we're starting to see the same thing that happened in 2008. It's like déjà vu all over again. Because when we look at Atlanta, we saw back in the peak of 05 and 06, we saw that all housing prices reached all-time highs. We're almost at that point once again. In Boston, we're above the peak of 05, 06. In Dallas, we're above the peak. San Francisco, we're pretty much at the peak. And it's the same for the rest of the cities. So what we're seeing right now is exactly the same thing that we saw back in 2008, right before everything fell apart. Now, before the financial crisis, home prices jumped due to easy credit, no documentation, no down payment, record high workforce numbers, a 4% unemployment rate, and this was, for all intents and purposes, the real unemployment rate where people actually had jobs, and we had rising wages at the time. Today, it's completely different. The unemployment numbers are completely fake. Home ownership is down to 1970 levels. Housing starts are back to 1991 levels. And the banks were instructed to keep houses off the market to increase the bubbles in certain cities. So all those foreclosures, do not put them on the market. The Fed came in and is continually buying up toxic real estate. So the high-end market right now is getting hit very hard. A record of 95 homes for $2.5 million and above are on the market, up 42% from the prior year, and they cannot move them. A record 75 luxury condos are for sale, and this is a 44% increase, and they cannot move them. We're seeing luxury home sales decline in the first 5 months of 2016, the first time since 2010. This tells us that we have a major problem. And yesterday I mentioned the Hamptons. And when I look around the Northeast, I look at the South, I look at the Midwest, the West, we're starting to see this spread quite a bit now. Actually, many people are taking their houses off the market because they've been lowering it $10,000, another $15,000, another $10,000. And after a while, what they do is they give up and they say, you know something, I'm done. So we're seeing retail contract. Housing is rapidly falling apart. And remember, this is the hot season for real estate. No pun intended. Because people like to get into their new homes before school starts. When the winter comes, housing really declines quite a bit. So we're in the middle right now. And we're seeing major problems. And as we go forward, it's just going to get worse. Now, the IMF is continually out there making predictions. And of course, during the Brexit, they said the whole thing is going to be falling apart, doom and gloom, our predictions that everything's going to crash. And of course, we had the referendum, and they kind of backtracked on that, saying, well, maybe not so much, it's going to crash as much as we said. And they're continually doing this, and their predictions are all over the place. Actually, the IMF is losing their credibility at this point. They've been seriously wrong for many years. They start off with high predictions, and they continually change them over time. They start off with GDP at 3%, then they go down to 2.5%, then 2%, then 1.5%, depending on which country it is. And they continually do this. And what we're seeing right now is that the central banks, they're just trying to keep this system going. The debt has reached a level where it cannot be sustained. Now, they brought interest rates down to zero. Many places it's gone negative. Think about this for a second. Why would you have to do that? The only reason is to keep those payments very, very low on the trillions and trillions worth of debt. But there will come a time, as the debt keeps piling up, it won't matter what the interest rates are because the governments will not be able to make the payments. Think about it. If we're turning into a part-time nation, if the world is turning into a part-time world, and Europe is decimated with unemployment, I mean, it's absolutely awful. Where is the revenue going to come from? And this is what they're fighting against. They're racing against the clock. Remember, they want to bring this down themselves. They don't want a black swan. They need to blame this on another country, another group, a people. They have a certain agenda that they're trying to follow. Because what they want to do is provoke a war, reduce the population, and restart this entire system once again. And hopefully, what they would like to do is get rid of the rights of the people and control the populations even further. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.